Okay, let me talk about the media tactics section. Okay. Um, so we've got our primary medium, secondary mediums, and things like that. And so now we got to figure out what to go in there. Looking at the sample plan red, one of the things to know is that the media tactics section really has kind of three beats to it, right? Three different things here. The first part is what you do is you kind of give a little quick summary of what I'm going to do. So I'm going to use television as I use television as the example. If you're going to use television, then your first part says that television, you have a little narrative that says television. It could be bullet points or ideally it's a bullet points that has these primary things. I'm going to use television. Whenever you're using television, whether it's cable or broadcast, you're going to have to tell what day parts you're using. Okay, and we'll talk about that, day parts. And then you're going to talk about kind of programming you're going to use. So you're going to talk about that. So you say what you're going to do. Then you have the Simmons data that supports what you did. And then you're going to have the details. Okay, and the details has all these things. It has the number of impressions. It has the GRPs. It has a cost per 1,000. It has a little discussion about how you're going to schedule it. So for instance, let's say that you're going to do television. You're going to do 20 weeks of television. And better yet, let's say you're going to do 26 weeks of television. You're going to do 26 weeks of television. It's going to be 6,000 GRPs, and it's going to be this, many billion impressions. CPM is this. And I'm spending this amount of money. I'm spending $22 million on television. You're going to have all those kinds of numbers. And then you're also going to say is, okay, I'm running 26 weeks, and you say, and I'm going to run those every other week for the whole year. Same amount, same number of GRPs that way. Or I'm going to run 250 GRPs for the first 6 weeks of the campaign, then I'm going to run 100 GRPs every other week for the rest of the campaign. Whatever that discussion is, you're going to have that. Okay, let's go back to Simmons. What do you have to have? If you're doing television, then you go to Simmons and you pull day parts. And the day parts are going to be, let me look at that. So day parts are going to be in the section that says cable and television radio. You scroll down, it says TV day parts, total viewing. You're going to go to day part cum, and actually you get a whole bunch of choices, but really what you want to do is go down to the bottom. Go down to the bottom of that long list, and it has late fringe, early fringe, daytime, all day, prime time. It has all of those times there. Okay, so they really use those at the bottom. And again, you're going to use that for whether you have network television or cable television. Now, if you use network television, that's using the ABC broadcast television, ABC, NBC, CBS, those different ones. All you're going to do is, and that's more expensive. The reason you might use that is because there's more reach, but it's also more expensive. It's not uncommon. Generally speaking, if television is your primary medium, you're probably going to spend some money on broadcast television and some money on cable television, because you'd want to use the broadcast to give you some reach, although it's more expensive. Then you'd use some cable television it's less expensive, but allows you to get more GRPs. Okay. So what you would say is that if you were using television that way, you would say, I'm spending, let's say it's your primary medium, and you end up spending $75 million on it. Okay. And then you might say, I'm going to take 20 million of that and spend it in broadcast television. Okay. And I'm going to use it in these day parts. And this is what that's going to get me. And I'm going to spend 55 billion in cable television. And I'm going to spend it in these day parts. Okay. Now, the additional thing you have to do for cable is that you have to tell me what cable networks you're going to buy. Okay, so broadcast, you're pretty much, when you say broadcast, you're going to buy between ABC, NBC, CBS. You'd have those. You're going to try to buy all of those, generally speaking. You're going to buy all of those. So there's really no choices to make there. You get down to individual programs, and we're really not going to talk about the individual program level for broadcast. So what you would do is, to illustrate that, you would just have your and make sure you understand what the broadcast networks are. So for instance, A&E is not a broadcast network. AMC is not a broadcast network. It's ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, CW, WB. Those, or you can do the Telemundo or Univision if you think Spanish language is important. Those are the broadcast networks. Everything else is cable. AME, TNT, TBS, ESPN, all those are cable. So you would tell me, broadcast television, I'm going to spend this much money on it. I'm going to spend it in these day parts. This is what I'm going to get. This is the CPM. Here's why I'm doing that. Then I'm going to spend this money on cable television. I'm going to run it in these day parts. And I am going to run it on these networks. And you're going to get that from Simmons. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that one, okay? If you do radio, okay, and you have two choices to do radio. And you actually have two choices on television too. You can do spot market local television or national television, okay? Or you can do national radio or local radio. You just need to pay attention to what your strategy might be. I mean, and there's two ways to think about it. You could do national, the whole country for this plan, or you could simply do radio or television in just the markets that we fly out of for Emirates, okay? You can make that choice. You just have to make sure you make that in media flight plan. But if you do radio, the two things you need for radio are, what are my day parts? You can find those in the same section there. You scroll down and you can find radio formats, QM audience. Now this is actually the biggest pain of all of them to do. Because what you have to do is that radio formats, there's probably about 30 radio formats. News Talk, Modern Rock, Mexican, CHR, all these different ones. Every time you click on one of them, it gives you a ton of times. So essentially what it's saying is, how well does adult contemporary do against this audience against all these times? The only one you really are interested in is the very first one, Monday through Sunday, total 24 hours. So for instance, you click on adult alternative, drag Monday through Sunday total down. Then you go to adult contemporary, you drop Monday through Sunday total down, AOR, all the way down. That's kind of a tedious job, but you have to do it that way. So in television, you'll have data that says, you've already had data that says, you already explained why you're using television. In the tactics section, you say, I'm running in these day parts, here's why. I'm running broadcast and cable, and you're going to give that discussion because it's primarily because of price, right? And then you're going to have, I'm going to run on these cable networks, and here's why. And I'll pull a list of those. You pull a list of those and look at those. Radio. You're going to say, I'm running radio. I'm running national or local. Make that call. I'm running in these day parts. Got to have the data to support that. And then I'm running in these formats. The question always comes up, how many cable networks do I need? How many formats do I need? For this plan, what I would say is that for every $2 million you spend on cable television, you need a cable network. Okay? For every $2 million you spend, you need a cable network. So if your budget's $10 million, you need 5 cable networks. If you've got $20 million, you need 10 cable networks. Okay, same thing for radio. I would say on radio, for every $2 million you have to spend, you need a format, at least one format. So I got $2 million in radio. I'm going to buy one format, $4 million, so forth. Okay, do that. Now, other media choices. If you use magazines, and magazines is either your primary or secondary, the only other Simmons, when you get to the tactics, the Simmons thing you have to do is you have to pick your individual magazines. And we're going to talk in class a little bit about how to pick those, but because that talks about GRPs. It's a little more complicated to pick the magazines, but you're going to pick your magazines. For digital, Digital is probably the least clean in terms of the tactics. And actually, I'm going to do a separate video on digital altogether and talk about what the digital tactics look like for that. Let us go for something that you're going to do for the cable network, the radio formats, or the magazines. You're going to do the same basic operation the same way for each of those three things. Okay. So let's suppose, and I'm going to use cable as the example, but you would do this the same for each one. So I have done my run. I have let's do cable. So I'm going to go over to cable. Cable TV and premium channels, cable services viewed in the last 7 days. There's a whole list of them. It starts with A&E. It goes all the way down to WGN America. I click that and drag that down into my rows. Okay. Drag that down into my rows. In my columns, I still have my same information about my target audience. Now, I'm going to run a crosstab on that. Give me just a second here. Okay, I'm going to run a crosstab. Now, I'm going to do this. I'm going to declick sample, weighted, horizontal, and total. That leaves only vertical and index checked. Then, over to the left of there, you'll see something that says crosstab, private eye, and trend. I'm going to click on private eye. Once I've done that, I'm going to click on export. I'm going to click on Excel 2007 and export it. Okay. And then I'm going to open that. Export it. I'm going to now have an Excel sheet. Okay. I want to do a couple of things. I'm going to fix the column in this particular. Okay, you're going to enable editing so you can edit the thing. I'm going to delete the total columns because all I want is the ones. Because so the first column is going to say total. You can delete those two columns. You don't need those at all. Only have the columns that represent the 1, 2, 3 demographic target audience descriptions you have. Okay, and you should have that vertical and index side by side all the way across. Your rows should have all of your things. When you export it, you're going to get some stuff at the top, crosstab title, study name. You can get rid of all that. Okay, clean this all up. And you might have some other things in the description in the rows, like for instance, cable TV might say cable TV services viewed in the last 7 days, A&E. You can get rid of all that other stuff and just have the cable networks. Okay. Now you're going to do two things. The first thing you're going to do, because what we want to do is we want to pick the cable networks that are the best combination of size and index. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to click in the vertical column in my Excel, and I'm going to sort that column from highest to lowest. Highest to lowest. Okay, so the highest vertical percentage is at the top, and the lowest is at the bottom. Okay. Now, I am going to get rid of. I'm only going to keep as a starting point. I'm only going to keep the top 30 cable networks. So go down and count 30. Okay? And then everything that's below that, every row that's below the top 30, just delete it. Get rid of it. Okay? Now you have a list of just 30 cable networks. A lot easier to work with. Okay? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid, in this case, of cable networks, anything that doesn't sell advertising. Doesn't sell advertising. So for instance, HBO might be there, Disney might be there. You know, in the spirit of know what you're going to buy, make sure that you know that you're not recommending that they buy ads on something that doesn't have ads. Showtime doesn't have ads. Okay? If you're not sure, go look it up. So do that. Then, the next thing you're going to do is that you're going to, for your primary demo, you're going to sort that by index now. So what you've done is you've narrowed your list down to the top 30, it could be down to 25 or so cable networks. And now you're sorting by index based on your primary, that first column, which should be your primary target audience. You may have a couple other ones that help you, like with age or income. Okay. Then what you're going to do is, is that you're going to look at these and say, which of these cable networks starting at the top, does better than 100 against my primary audience, and then also does better than 100 on the other two. Okay, all you're looking for is just better than 100 there, or close to 100. You could be 90, some of them might be 97, 98. It's fine on those secondary characteristics. Okay, and then you're just going to go down through there and you're going to pick those, ever how many cable networks you need. Now, you don't have to just pick the top ones. I mean, if you have an idea, let's say that you feel pretty strong that ESPN is going to be an important one based on your target and who you envision it, but ESPN is number 8 on that list, and it indexes well, but it's number 8 on one list, and it still does pretty well on the others. You can pick that one. You can pick that one because you can say, I'm really looking for some male skewed ones. If there's a network at the top that doesn't do very well, then you can get rid of that one. Okay. Oh, I forgot to ask. I'm going back. Before, when you get that primary list of 30, the other thing you're going to cut out is anything that's got 2 asterisks on it. It could be in the top 30 and still have 2 asterisks just on that very first column. Your first column should be your primary target audience, frequent business flyers, whatever it is. If it's in the top 30 and it still has 2 asterisks, then delete it. Delete that row out. Don't even worry with it. Okay, because you only want those things that do well. Now you're going to do the same thing for radio formats. You're going to sort your radio formats by the vertical. Look at the top, and radio formats is shorter, so probably you could look at the top 15 radio formats. Delete everything that's below the top 15, resort it by index, and then pick the ones. Because what you're saying is, I'm okay with any of the 15 as long as they've got a good index and they do well against my other ones, and pick ever how many you need to do that. Magazines, resort it, get your, you sort your list of magazines, get your top 30 magazines, delete everything else below it, and then sort out the ones that have the best indexes, resort on index, and the ones that do well on the other thing, all 3 or 4 characteristics you want to check it on, and pick those and say, these are the ones. And again, use your common sense, okay? If you're picking an audience that you think is primarily male, even if Cosmo does well all the way across, don't do that. If you're primarily picking a younger audience, don't pick a magazine that does well, that somehow does well against all these in Simmons. If it doesn't fit, if it doesn't feel right, don't fit that. Also, just as an aside, when you're doing the tactics section to make yours a little nicer, once you pick your magazines or your cable networks or your radio formats, add some pictures to the mix to help you brighten it up, whether it's logos or pictures of music stars to represent that genre or those kinds of things. Okay, so I'm fixing to go to class. See you in a little bit.